online can join them. Indeed they want to. There have been one or two in the past. I won't say we've been overwhelmed. It was very pretty poster, I thought. Did you never see it?
I did. I got kind of distracted by it. Significance in having something who's present.
Well, that's fair, or indeed.
It was very distracting, and I just thought it was a message.
Well, there may be, but I suspect not. I suspect it was a photograph taken out of a photo bank.
Yeah.
So, despite appearances, this is not a seminar about maternity.
Well, not really, no.
Forgive us for a moment. We're having a. This is there's a sort of slight technical. I can get on. There's a slight technical interruption related to whether we are on. Whether we can be pursued online by colleagues across the world, and in principle we like to be available to our colleagues in Africa, Asia, America, across Europe, Antarctica even. So Ian is trying to sort of load us up. In the meantime, I'll do a bit of introduction. Here we have, sitting beside us, Monica McLean, whom most of you, I hope, will be aware of. Monica is Professor of, I don't know, in the School of Education, and she's done lots of exciting research, and so on. She's a terribly significant person, and also a very nice one. However, she has agreed, about 2 years ago, the research centre, the Have Research Centre, had a bit of money to spare, and it allowed people to apply for, thanks very much, for research grants, just a few £100s, and Monica, together with Melanie Walker, applied for a research grant, and one of the conditions was that they give a seminar based on this research. So, this is the product of an investment by the research centre. Albeit, I'm sure it's a small investment, I think just a few £100. I'm sure the research and the product is going to be much greater than that. Monica.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Yes, so we are very grateful to Have for, it was money for transcribing interviews. And I'm also grateful for this opportunity to talk about it, because I think had I not had this, probably those interviews might have lain around for an awfully long time. So I'm really pleased that I've got this opportunity to have looked at them. So what I'm going to report on is the first year of a small-scale comparative study of academics right at the beginning of their careers, or fairly near the beginning of their careers. 14 of them, 6 in what's called a new or a teaching intensive, anyway, a poorer university, and 8 in a richer old university. So we interviewed and we've collected their life histories between May and June last year, and we're going to go back and talk to them in January, this January, and then we're hoping to go on every 18 months for about 6 years. So we've interviewed them about 5 times. We have the time. I mean, I'm very happy because you can see this is very much a work in progress. If you want to kind of ask questions as I go along, I'd be completely happy with that, and it might work better. My colleagues who've done this with me are Andrea Abbas, who is at Lincoln University, and Melanie Walker, who's now at the University of the Free State in South Africa. And we've called the project Academic Identity Formation in Age of Austerity for the Arts and the Social Sciences. Now, first of all, just to talk to you a little bit about why we had this particular interest. So first of all, we have some assumptions about what the key functions of universities are. For brevity here, we've used what Jürgen Habermas has called the bundle of functions of university. So he's identified four. One is that universities are connected to the economy through teaching and research. So exploitable knowledge, if you like, needs to be transmitted to a new generation, so that wealth and services are provided, the needs of society are provided for. Secondly, universities are the sites for the academic preparation of professionals who are completely necessary for the functioning of contemporary society. Thirdly, they're responsible for the transmission, interpretation, and development of cultural knowledge, which mainly resides with the arts and the social sciences. And finally, there's a critical function to contribute to intellectual, cultural, political, and civic life. And there's a kind of broad agreement about that bundle of functions, and this is what we assumed. So given those functions, what's happening at the moment? It is widely acknowledged that times are fairly turbulent and unpredictable in the university environment at the moment, and that there's a biggish body of work suggesting that an audit culture has permeated universities, which threatens the intrinsic value of core academic work, which is broadly reproducing disciplines in research and in teaching rather than producing it by research. And now there's a new fee regime which changes and might reduce the funding, in particular for arts and social sciences, and at the same time the reduction of funding available for research. So it seemed to us quite a productive moment to see what was happening to academic work and to academic identity through the eyes of new academics who are looking forward to a full career. So broadly, we're interested in how academics shape and are shaped by the circumstances they find themselves in as they're trying to fulfill the functions of a university. As I said, do interrupt if you want, if things have occurred to you. So these were our research questions. How do new academics conceptualise and value their work? Do these constructions and values shift over time? That is, over the first 5 years of their career, as we're hoping to see them. Of course, one thing to say, by the way, is that although now they're in 2 universities, we kind of assume by the end of 6 years they'll be in more than 2 universities because they'll have shifted around to other places. How do individual academics directly mediate their department, school or faculty arrangements, and indirectly the institutional context and national policy that impacts on their work? And does this change over time? And finally, a third question, are there variations in the development of academic identities over 5 or 6 years that can be characterised and explained, either by the individual, if you like, or by the circumstances they find themselves in? So we decided, I'll try and explain now, Pierre Bourdieu uses the concept of habitus. I mean, these are concepts some of you will be familiar with. Basil Bernstein uses code as a concept, and Habermas the concept of the life world, to convey what are kind of unconscious and collective patternings of group behaviour. And we don't have any doubt that in the field of university discursive practices, there is an unconscious, if you like, academic life world or habitus. But what we were interested in is what academics can tell us of their conscious understanding of what's happening to them. So we decided to see to what extent Margaret Archer's work on different types of reflexive could throw light on research questions. So I'm going to try and convey what concepts we've used and explain them quite briefly, and you might like to ask questions about this.
So you're happy to take questions as we go along?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm happy to take
bear
questions.
that in mind.
Yeah. Okay, so briefly, Archer's perspective relies on the idea that society is a product of and produces, on the one hand, what she calls morphostasis, which is continuity, and it's the result of routinization. So things are completely routine and they just get reproduced. And so on the one hand, things continue. On the other hand, there is morphogenesis, which is things change, and there's discontinuity with the past. And she sees this as the result of reflexivity. So from Archer's perspective, the important thing is that human beings are always reflective, even if routinization has declined with modernity. Now, some theories like Giddens and Habermas would say that reflection is actually, you only really see it in modernity. I mean, she doesn't think this. She thinks people have always been agents, if you like, through the way they think about their lives and what to do in them. So for her, agential reflexivity mediates social structural powers. So the main idea that we've taken here from Margaret Archer is that individual reflexivity, how people think about what they're doing and what they want to become in their lives, stands in the middle of, if you like, and changes the material structures and the cultures that they find themselves in. So reflexivity, if you like, can keep things the same for an individual or change them for an individual. And now, that doesn't mean to say that there are not quite objective constraints and enablements in all lives, and that life projects for people aren't kind of the distribution of power interests. But nevertheless, different kinds of reflexivity orients individuals differently towards the enablements and the constraints that they find themselves in. And this reflexivity is what she calls people's internal conversations. And the type of internal conversation shapes people's lives. And it does this by involving them in first, what she calls, and this is a quotation, defining and dovetailing their concerns, which she calls their internal goods, secondly, developing concrete courses of action, or what she calls life projects, and she terms this micropolitics, and thirdly, by establishing sustainable practices in their lives, what she calls modus vivendi. And she distinguishes three types of reflexive, identifiable by the type of conversation which they have with themselves, or deliberations about themselves. And these conversations are related to what people care about most in life, and also to forms of social mobility. They're empirically derived. So she did lots these are her two books, Making Our Way Through the World and Structure, Agency and Internal Conversation. And she's got huge amounts of money and lots of time off to go and interview people and to identify.
Jealous.
Very jealous, yes. To identify these different types of reflexives. And she writes really nicely, and they're well worth reading. So the three types are, and I've used here the quotation is from this book, Making Our Way Through the World, to try and convey the essence of what each of the type of reflexive is. So the first is the communicative reflexive, who works hard at staying put. She says they're agents for stability, she would think of them as. And the ultimate concern of a communicative reflexive is with family and friends. So for them, unassailably, if you like, the quality of life resides in interpersonal fulfillment. And the kind of characteristics of their conversations is that they need to share with others. They tend not to complete their thoughts on their own. They don't make up their minds until they've talked to their mates and their family. And their lives, or their inner lives, if you like, well, their lives are marked by contextual continuity. So they tend to keep their natal context, where they were born, and the type of family they've come from. They tend to go into the same kinds of things. What she calls a dovetail of concerns, and the concerns are the three human concerns that she identifies with. One is with a kind of physical concern with the physical world, physical well-being. The other is with the social order, and the third I've gone and forgotten, but I will remember it soon. The third is with the political order, I think. Physical well-being, performative, in relation to work, and then self-worth in relation to social order. So for the communicative reflective, social order is the most important thing. But they can dovetail all those concerns and feel contentment that they've actually dovetailed. So thirdly becomes contentment with the modus vivendi that they find. So they replicate their inherited context and they actively reduce horizons, according to Archer. They're interested in comfort rather than affluence, personal respect rather than high esteem, and local influence rather than structural power or authority. So that's her first one. The second group she identified, she called autonomous reflexives, which is used upwards and outward bound for those. They're very interested in performative achievement. Work is the kind of central trope for autonomous reflectives. And she describes them as agents for change. So their lives tend to be quite eventful and they involve, there's a lot of intensive internal scrutiny which is done on their own. So there's a lot of thinking that goes on and they spend their time thinking on their own and making up their minds on their own. Autonomous reflectors show readiness to move away from their original context, especially if it involves a socio-economic break. So, as I said, work is centrally important, but still the concerns are easily dovetailed. Autonomous reflectors tend to have a kind of ethic of commitment to the other concerns. So, for example, to their families. And they'll be fair to their families, even though, in a sense, work remains kind of central. They tend to take a strategic stance towards the constraints and enablements in their lives. They're quintessentially independent, individualistic, self-reliant, and think people should take responsibility for themselves. There is a marked tendency to leave home. And the third group is what she calls meta-reflexives. Now, she just calls that moving on. They tend to be, she calls it lateral mobility, but what it actually means is that within her group of meta-reflexives, they could be upwardly mobile or socially mobile, downwardly socially mobile, or static and move across. What was important? They're not rooted to any context. They're idealists and they have a sense of vocation. And they invest emotionally in their projects. And from her point of view, meta-reflexives very rarely feel contentment. They very rarely manage to dovetail their concerns because they're idealists, and the institutions which they're drawn to tend not to approximate to their ideal. They're critical and they tend to move on. So they rarely arrive, or they don't arrive, to be a meta-reflective at a kind of stable accommodation. So that's the kind of theoretical framework. Shall I pause there and see if there are any questions about that?
There's a case, an example on the narrative, and there's a woman who's dyslexic who goes off to be a hairdresser, manages a hairdressing salon, but she has a lot of conflict with her mum in relation to her mum's the head teacher, I think, in the school, and how she perceives her capabilities.
This is an example from Archer.
So would you put her as an autonomous reflexive?
Oh, I really don't know.
Right, okay.
That's the theory.
Yeah.
You know, the actual practice of and you know, as you read this, I mean, and one of the things certainly one of our questions was the extent to which this was going to be kind of helpful and useful for us.
So she breaks away, this young woman, from a family in many ways to set up on her own, basically.
Yeah.
Is there a sense that through that description of meta-reflexive people, that there's something missing in the cycle or the journey that they particularly take, whereas the other two have a kind of complete thing by dovetailing these different areas and reaching contentment, whereas the last category is suggesting that there's constantly moving on and maybe not facing some aspect.
No, I don't think she thinks of it like that at all. I mean, I'm not going to particularly deal with this today, but she also connects these different kinds of reflexives to roles in civic society, and meta-reflexives are the conscience of society. So they're very, from her point of view, You know, so they have a different role, but she wouldn't see it as a kind of lack. But she's trying not to say any of them have lacks, because they're agential. They're making decisions about their own lives, you know, and certain things might have predisposed them to being, for example, an autonomous reflexive can be, you know, disjunction from their natal concepts might be forced upon them. I mean, you might find yourself in a war-torn country, and you know, and then you're completely away, and therefore you might begin to think in different ways than if you can just stay at home with everybody you want to stay with.
So these are not, as it were,
They're ideal types.
they're ideal types, but they're not psychologically
Well, no, actually,
driven.
she doesn't think they are ideal types. To be honest, I think she chose. She did a big survey and then chose what she calls extreme cases of each of these reflexives.
No, I just think, you know, probably it's fair to say more or less it's context dependent, isn't it? You know, sometimes the same person, not category in particular type of, you know, reflex. They can change, depends on their, you know, when they're in different context.
Yes, though meta-reflexives tend not to. Yes, that's right.
Mm.
Is there,
Can I hand these round?
started reading Archie, so that's a very silly question, but is there a cultural context for this? I just wonder whether this would be, is she expecting this to be a sort of, would this be possible to be applicable in a universal sense? Mm. Or does she feel there is a strong cultural context in the research she's done? And therefore, does that narrow the basis?
I think there's
I think she thinks it's fairly universal.
Universal, she's taking as a,
I think she thinks it.
and changeable depending on circumstance and external forces.
Well, certainly, you know, a communicative reflexive might be just jettisoned out of, you know, their context, and then, you know, that's that, because
Surviving,
and that is the a structure that they can't help, you know. So it's not that everybody.
I think whether it is universal is something, you know, we can maybe, you know, test it in the future.
Yes,
So
yes,
I
of
think
course.
more
Yes, I mean, and that's what you would do with any theory, is
Yeah.
test it empirically yourselves, and you know, not accept it as a
Because back to your example, because I was going to ask you, but I don't know whether you will give a bit more information later. For example, this 14 academics.
Yeah, here they are.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Right, so here are the 14 academics. I've here just given you some information about them. Don't be tempted to try and think that they might be people in this university. They might or they might not be. So, I mean, obviously a very important issue is maintaining their anonymity, and any kind of presentation or writing we do, we try very hard to do that. But you know, you can just see they have, well, I don't know whether you want to just have a quick look at that. It's just to give you a sense of who they are and where they came from and what kind of age they are and whether they've got children, how long they've been in work. There's a few on the back too. I'd just be interested if anything struck you. It might or it might not.
These nationalities, do you have any information, say for example, were they born in country or were they,
Yes.
they all born in this country?
No.
Okay.
None of them were born in this country. None of them, except for Falguni,
Okay.
who has one parent who is English. So quite a lot of overseas background. So straight away you see that their lives are discontinuous. Okay, just going to say something about the methodology. So as I said, 14 lecturers at 2 universities in 2011-12, but you know that could well change, and some certainly are planning to go on. So we interviewed following Margaret Archer's method, or at least tried to. I don't think we did it very well, but what's really great about this project is we have an opportunity to go back. I mean, that's what we've planned to do, so it isn't just a one-off, which often research is. We try to be dialogic and reciprocal because we're also academics, older academics, so you know they're our kind of colleagues and peers. In the first interview, we did what we called life grids, which I haven't brought one here, but it's basically a way of collecting a life history quite quickly and easily, so that we had a sense of the important events and the trajectories in these academics' lives. And then, yeah, we had the interviews, and the Margaret Archer method was really trying to get at concerns, if you like, and life projects and these kinds of ideas that Margaret Archer identified in her group. So we've decided on, yeah, every 18, we started with every year, but it's too soon, we think, so we're going for 18 months. In terms of how we tried to deal with the analysis, is that we followed Bernstein's idea that there's what he calls the internal language. It's slightly counterintuitive. The internal language of description is the theory. So in this case, it's Margaret Archer. And the external language of description is what the lecturers say, because we don't literally kind of ask her about, you know, obviously you don't say what kind of reflexive are you. So you're kind of talking to them about their, in normal everyday language, about their normal everyday lives. So his idea is you try and keep them separate. So you try not to let the internal language of description, the theory, over-determine what you think you're finding in the empirical data. So we try to pursue that. So what we've done so far is for each of the lecturers kind of read through and write a synopsis, if you like, from the life grid and the interview, and we'll add to that each year. So there'll be a kind of story for each one. And then we've stored them in NViva, and we've messed about with a few themes that that I'll talk to you about, and then finally try and, you know, made some kind of attempt to see how Archer's theory might work, and that, you know, that's what I'd like to get to see what you think about that, because we're not at all sure about anything at the moment. What I'm going to do first, before I go on to the themes, though, is just read to you a couple of kind of really pared down synopses, just to give you a sense of who these people are and how different their stories can be. So the first one is Isabel Brown. I'm not telling you everything, obviously, but you know, it's just to give you a kind of flavour on them. She's a part-time lecturer in criminology on a permanent contract in a university in the town, we'll call it Drayton, where she was born and brought up, and where she took her first degree and her PhD. She describes herself, no, she didn't take her first degree, sorry, her MA and her PhD. She describes herself as coming from a rough working class estate in Drayton. She was an only child brought up by a single mother who was beaten up by her boyfriend later. I mean, these things come up spontaneously when you talk to people. She was identified as outstandingly bright at primary school. She says actually she was good at social sciences and humanities, but not at maths and sciences. She loved reading as a child. She played truant a lot at secondary school, so she messed up her A-levels. She got 2 Ds, which at the time was enough to go some 200 miles away to a polytechnic in another town to do European marketing. After that, she went to Drayton University to do a second degree in criminology and sociology. She said that at Drayton, everyone felt posher than her, and throughout her early life, she experienced a lot of not fitting in, either at home on her estate or at university. She says she lacks confidence and has to remind herself that she's as good as other people. She's now married to a bricklayer with 1 child. She applied for the university post because she couldn't move because her family lives in Drayton. She values the security and status in a permanent post. And what she likes about this work is, and I'll quote, "I like finding out something original, but I think the most enjoyable thing is when you've got the findings and you've written something and you think about different ways of framing it and writing about it and really polishing it and coming out with something really that you feel good about and that you're proud of as well. And then when you get a good reception or a good response for what you've done and it all fits together." So in relation to research, she tends to work on a lot of different kind of small funded projects, and she regards herself as she puts it, all over the place. But actually she's keen to publish and to write, and she told us she has a fourth in the pipeline for the research assessment exercise. So she's actually doing absolutely fine. She's not going to upset her school at all. She doesn't think in terms of, I want to be a reader in 5 years. In fact, she doesn't think she'd like to be a professor. She wants to keep her head above water, perhaps bring in some funding, publish more, get better at presenting, at which she has to work hard, and do her teaching, which she really enjoys. She likes teaching things she can get passionate about, like gender and social justice. She doesn't like unprepared students. And an achievement for her in the early part of her career has been the redesign of a module which now gets very good evaluations after having had bad ones in its previous incarnation. She's finding out what she needs to do, what she, as she puts it, being an academic means, but she wished she'd had better guidance from people in the school. She works part-time, so she says she manages motherhood, and she's not ambitious, and nor is she, quote, playing a long game. And she'd quite like to have, time to play a musical instrument and get fit. She's not doing it at the moment. So in terms of the environment she's in, she's pleased that her line manager says a few things like, "You've done well, you're good value for money." I bet she is, part-time and doing all that. She doesn't like the teaching orthodoxies of the teaching course that she spent on, but she says, "I'm not a rebel, I don't get hacked off about things that other people seem to think are terrible." And in relation to this, she knows that at this particular moment in her school, the morale is rather low. And it was a particular moment. There were kind of threats of redundancies in the summer last year. But she doesn't actually have much patience with it. She says, people don't realise how good they've got it. So kind of the morale is low. And people don't think research is valued enough. I've always had it in my head, you're the one who's got to earn your stripes here, Isabel, if you want to get the real perks. Do you know what I mean? So I'm quite prepared to do the teaching and trying to do the research on top. And I think fundamentally as well, if people aren't bringing in money, then there's no money to pay them to get bought out. And this teaching, who's going to do it? The autonomy you get with this job, which is probably not going to be as much in years to come, but there are times when you're in your office and you're writing, and I mean, that's great, isn't it? What a great world we're living in, even if it is sometimes excruciatingly hard. So that's Isabel, and how she feels about her work and how she's got there. And then Michael Fraser is the other one, just to give you some sense of variation. He's a lecturer in politics after 9 years, so he's not actually the early career. We access these people through these teaching courses, and he's obviously just been caught and put on it. And he still is a lecturer, and most people would probably have expected some kind of promotion in 9 years. His parents were university educated, and they always expected him to do well and sent him to alternative schools. He's always loved writing. He wanted to be a fiction writer. His first degree was at a well-known American university with English, and he changed to history. It was important for him that he did freshman classes on American foreign policy and Soviet politics in the mid-80s, and he decided to learn Russian in order to write about US-Soviet relations to pursue a career in journalism. He realised, though, that he wouldn't have as much freedom to write as a journalist as he would in a university, and what he wanted to do was write. So he did a PhD in another well-known US university on US and Soviet relations. And when he applied for jobs, he went both for the US and the UK. He said he felt a connection with UK because he liked English literature. And the one he's in now was the one that came up first. So his overall ambition is to make a mark on political theory. He wants to reach to economists and philosophers as well as people in politics and have an effect on politics. He says, I want to write about things that I think are important, which interests me, and universities allow me more freedom to choose what I want to write about than any other option I can think of, you know. If I mean, for me, I suppose, the ideal career would be someone like George Monbiot. I'm primarily interested in publishing and having written work that I hope is good work, and having writing that will influence people and be read. I'm less concerned about promotion and that sort of title I have on my door and that kind of thing. So he spent a long time deciding what book he wants to write, which is in a way why his promotion hasn't come through. And he says, I'm rather glad I did that, and I discovered finally what I really am good at and want to do, as opposed to rushing into it. And actually, he says the REF, the Research Assessment Framework, suits him because it's quality, not quantity, that counts. So he slowly produces 4 papers that he's very happy with him. He describes himself as more or less average in teaching quality. He likes teaching, he likes the autonomy of choosing what to teach, but teaching isn't what his heart is in, although he can find it enjoyable. He avoids admin, and he also thinks that being a professor might bring more of that, so he's not interested in it. And in the last 5 years, he feels that things have got more authoritarian, but he's still allowed to do what he wants to do, and that's the important thing. His wife is in a completely other country with children, so he thinks it probably would be better to have a job nearer, but he would prefer to have more time for work. He doesn't want more leisure time. He knows he ought to have more time with his family. He wants more time for work, but not more leisure time. But it does cause quite a bit of friction. So that's Michael and Isabel. Did anything strike you about those, or any questions arise?
Are they meta-reflexives? Or what?
And Michael more meta-reflexive in terms of he very clearly has an idea what he wants to do, fitting in with his work, whereas...
Yeah, I think he would be quite, Michael is very obvious in the sense that he clearly wouldn't stay if he couldn't do what he wanted to do.
Right.
And he's not going to, so in a way it works quick, he works quite well as a kind of very clear cut.
Whereas Isabel was your first category, whose name I forget.
Well, she's a kind of mix, isn't she? Yeah, as we thought.
Oh, right, well,
Well, these are only heuristics, obviously.
But Isabel has come much further.
Yes. In terms of discontinuity, in that sense, yes.
She's travelled much further.
Yes. Yes. Yes, I think that's right.
But she appreciates the structure she's in.
Yes.
Much more.
Yes.
And it may be more responsive to that.
Yes.
So the combination.
And he's actually very contented, at least at the moment. I mean, obviously these are moments, you know, so you know, things might change. I'm going to go on now to some of the themes. I mean, one point is that Archer herself makes the point that going to higher education in itself is usually a pretty radical discontinuity in anybody's terms, you know, because, you know, you tend either to be the first in your family who's gone, even if you live at home or you leave home. It tends to be a kind of discontinuity. These are some themes. Whether or not they're kind of any significance or not, I don't know, but they're things that kind of hit us, if you like. So I'm just going to go through them a bit. So there seems to be a lot of serendipitous events in these people's lives, and it was quite marked that all of them, and again, we don't say, you know, did your parents value education? That, you know, you just say, tell me about, you know, your primary school age. So these things come very spontaneously in conversation. So they all had parents who valued education and supported them in one way or another. remarkably, 8 of the 9 who were the first of their families to go to university spontaneously told us, like Isabel, that they'd been identified as especially clever in some way or another at primary school. So, I mean, now, you know, from my point of view, as an educationist, this seems to be luck. Not that they are necessarily clever. It might have been that they were quick at reading or had a good memory. But the point is, they get a self-image of being somebody who's good at this kind of thing early on, which only makes you, you know, quite upset about those that don't get this self-image. But anyway, that tended to happen. They've been told that, and they remain, even if they had disastrous secondary schools, that kind of self-image tended to remain for them. And this kind of serendipitousness kind of happened even finding the subject that seemed to spark. So, for example, Becky Noon there, these are in alphabetical order, who is a sociologist. She is a sociologist because she did very badly at school, and sociology was the lowest grade she could get into anywhere to do. But then, you know, she thought it was absolutely great. So that was kind of, you know, serendipitous too. And then Fatima did all kinds of things, but suddenly found British South Asian literature after university, and that's the thing that really drives her now. And Peter, who is the only one of 26 cousins, and anybody else in the previous family who's gone to university, went to a comprehensive school that made classics compulsory. And that is just so rare. And he just thought it was absolutely brilliant. And whether or not that would have happened for him with anything else, it might have done, but we don't know that. And he's completely wrapped up in classics now. So there's quite a lot of this kind of stuff that goes on in their lives and makes a difference. In terms of social mobility, at first sight, 9 of the 14 seem to be quite seriously upwardly mobile, in the sense that their immediate families haven't gone to university, and 2 of them are married to skilled manual labourers. So in that sense, you know, they keep a continuity with their married relationship, even though their kind of occupation is very discontinuous with it. But I mean, one who is Helen, who comes from Northern Ireland, of her, I think it's her 6 siblings, she's the only one who's gone to university. But in her and her parents didn't go to university. But then, you know, talking to her, of the 11 children in her father's family, the first half did go to university, and the second half didn't go to university. So some of her aunts and uncles have gone to university, and because she was in a very politicised situation, and you know, her parents were very interested in education, there was it's not as discontinuous as it looks at first sight, is what I'm trying to say. You know, there was a lot of kind of role models and kind of encouragement to do it. We kind of designated a couple as downwardly mobile, but only in the sense that they came from either an elite family abroad, or their parents worked in an elite university and they're now in the new university. So it wouldn't look like that on any kind of table or anything. So that's mobility. And it connects, of course, to this idea of discontinuity and continuity. So that this was quite interesting, because it was much more kind of complex in a way than I think I managed to get from reading Archer. I mean, it might be my reading of her and I need to go back to it. But the person who was absolutely hugely discontinuous with everything was Valeria, who came from Russia. So she left her country. She left her class background. She doesn't see her family. So on 3 counts, she's completely cut her ties, if you like. But most people didn't. Most people kind of somehow, I think, had a kind of modus vivendi between continuity and discontinuity. Something kind of kept them, you know, where they were with the past. So or maybe they, I mean, Sophia, for example, her parents haven't spoken to her for 5 years because they don't agree with education. That's the lawyer in that one. So quite a lot of them are very close to their families, even if they're not living close. So Helen and Fatima and Peter are very close. Isabel stayed in the area. And of the people who've left their country, quite often their class background is continuous, like Darius and Michael and Nita. And it's really only the two, Valeria and Kari, actually, who have a kind of treble discontinuity of class, background, country and family. But there is quite a lot of living away from partners. You know, so three of them, including Michael, live along, you know, different countries even. So Helen's husband's in Sweden while she's in England, and so and quite often they're living in different towns as well. The fourth theme was about, I've put question marks in, I'm not at all sure I've got this right, and I'd be really happy to have your thoughts on this, is that, and I'll give you another handout in a minute so you can look at it, is that we thought that what we discerned was the difference between what we've called here a kind of personal project, which might be something, maybe that's not the right word, it was a very focused project. It was very, they really knew what they wanted to do. So for example, Helen, coming from Northern Ireland, and because she came from Northern Ireland, has always been passionately interested in human rights, and what she wants to work with is human rights and make a difference. She just knows that that's what she wants to do. Michael equally knows exactly what he wants to do and what he wants to influence. And Darius wants, and Falguni and the representations of women in post-colonial literature. So it's that kind of very, very personal project on the one hand, and on the other, what we've called here a kind of intellectual project, which is more, it's the type of work, whatever the project that is so drawing, it's reading and writing and thinking. So, for example, this is from Sophia. I get paid to read books. I want to read, for goodness sake. And I talk to people that I'm really interested in, find out stuff that I want to find out about. I really am the proverbial dog with two doodahs. It's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. And that's what this job's about. It's about being able to pay the bills and do exactly what you want to do. And Nita's the same. I'm really happiest when I'm writing something and it's going really well and I can think through an idea, and I like reading and I like thinking about things and I like writing about it, and that's what keeps me going. So it's much less focused on something specific, but it's actually the whole kind of processes that are so enjoyable. And Isabel, as you've heard, is the same. So we'll go back to this. Then there was a huge theme about intensity of work, where there seemed to be absolutely no dovetailing or modus of vivendi. There seemed to be no boundaries to academic work, and that was absolutely across the board. And one thing we thought about was whether in the work as a whole there's a kind of misrecognition on the part of people who actually don't do this work about the sheer time it takes to read and to write and to think. I mean, these were people at the beginning of the career, so teaching was taking quite a long time. But somebody like Michael was finding teaching, you know, you can do in a comparatively short time and prepare for it, but reading and writing takes these huge amounts of time. So these were in their early careers, so there had been a very steep learning curve, and they basically wanted to survive. And the climate of support was hugely important to these people. But there was a big theme of sacrifices. Now, sometimes these sacrifices seem willing, like Michael would willingly have sacrificed everything to work all the time, but it didn't seem kind of civilized or right to do that, or unwillingly. And as you can see, they don't have an awful lot of children between them. I mean, Michael has 2, but they don't live with him. And Darren has 1, but, you know, and some of them are thinking about children, very anxious about how they're going to manage this work with children. So they all claim very, very long hours, 40 to 50-hour weeks. They all claim they work at weekends. And Becky says, if I do go out to see friends or take Sunday off, I feel like I've kind of decided to be a certain kind of, well, I've kissed goodbye to being successful because I'm not the kind of academic who works on weekends. So it's really strong, this. You know, and there's a lot about, you know, family life being jeopardised, those who have family lives, which is Darius, Falguni and Nita. So that's kind of connected to this idea of the bureaucratised space, you know, where too much pressure is actually taking the joy out of it as well. And Becky talks about that. And then there's Darren, who seems to be a bit of a bad spot, where he's, you know, he wants to do stuff, but he's not being published because it's kind of on the margins of disciplines, and it's not getting into the kind of journals that the department wants it to. So he says, being really honest, I think, well, you just get the sense that some academics are just so passionate about what they're doing all the time. And sometimes I feel like that, but probably it just might be the way things are at the moment. But the vast majority of the time now, I'd rather be reading a paper or doing or going for a walk or doing something else. So I have to kind of force myself to write. And it is rewarding when I get into it, when I get something finished. The process is hard work because it takes me a long time to get finished with something I'm satisfied with, basically. So it's this sense that, you know, that what it takes isn't actually kind of recognised.
Is there within the sort of discontinuity between sort of the academics within the new universities around being academic, actually wanting to pursue something that's academic as opposed to just teaching related?
I don't think there's that. I'm trying not to make too much of the university divide in this particular presentation. I don't think you find that divide.
Okay.
It's not there.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's equal kind of some are more teaching inclined, some are more research inclined. You might find in my 14 a few more teaching inclined, but they're not completely teaching inclined. You know, some will say, I really enjoy teaching, not like Michael say, you know, what really drives me is the research.
So a general type there then in terms of wanting to be
going
into that academic field.
It's not different across the two universities.
It's very, very similar then.
Yeah. I would say so.
Could I ask you about M and A?
Oh, I just thought, I was just playing, I'll come back to that, whether the ones who've got personal projects are more meta-reflexive and the ones who've got the type of work one, if you see what I mean, who aren't as focused. I don't think this is right quite yet, or autonomous reflexive. That's well, I should have taken that out. I didn't mean to leave it there. Okay, obviously, and this has been written about a lot, and there is this idea, isn't it, that academics are like, what is it, herding cats, and there is a kind of, you know, the autonomy over their own lives in the code is really, really important. It's just the free. I mean, Fatima says the incredible freedom of the job. You know, whatever happens is what's. And again, it's Isabel. You know, the autonomy you get with this job. You know, that it's that, and that makes a lot of difference. People, some take it more for granted than others. Some don't. Some of these new academics don't take it for granted. They just think it's brilliant that they've got this autonomy. And then finally, this is the promotion and pay. They really aren't very interested in what I've heard called the prestige economy. I mean, they are early in their career, but they can kind of see, some of them, that if you get promoted, you might be in a position to do more than you want to do. But by and large, they're very cautious about. By and large, I have to say, some of them do talk more strategically about their promotion, if you like. are not that interested. They definitely would like a bit more pay. Especially the ones that are trying to travelling to see their, you know, partners abroad and stuff. But it is much more about pay than about titles at the moment. And again, it'll be interesting to see if that shifts over the years that we talk to them. So those are the main themes for now. Is there anything you'd like to raise about them? And then I'll go on to the reflexives.
Just wondered how much you think austerity, the context of austerity,
Makes a difference.
affects, has an effect on
Well-
us. I mean, there's no previous research to a similar group to compare. If you did this 10 years ago, I wonder would it be different? It'd be interesting just to.
Well, Mary Henkel has done a study about 10 years ago.
On the same.
And it's not really very different.
Right,
No, I mean, she's claiming that the newer academics then were more adapted to the audit culture, which is slightly different from the austerity, if you see what I mean. I mean, but in terms of austerity, the new university is a lot poorer than the old university. They're expected to do a lot more teaching, so their conditions are very different. So they're already in much more austere conditions. That six of them than the other 8. But their sentiments are kind of the same, even if they're kind of working, and they all say they're working too hard.
Do you think some of that is some of where they're is by virtue of their age? I mean, I know that there's a reasonable age span, but
they're mainly
not
in their
yet-
30s, aren't they?
Yeah, they're not yet completely exhausted or beaten down by the system. You know, they're still in that kind of flush of optimism and isn't this great? And
Yeah,
this is
might
where we're
well
going.
be.
And whether that will
And they haven't
change
got that
over
many
age.
children either to wear them down, have they?
they may not have had all of those other life experiences.
Exactly. No,
births, deaths, and all that
absolutely
kind of
right. Yeah, no, I think that is right. But yeah, okay, I think that is right.
There's something in there that also suggests that the way talking about them working long hours and so on.
Yeah.
That does the university as an idea actually profit by the youth of new teachers in that new academics
We all work
in
every
that sense.
weekend.
Do you know what I mean? No, I know.
When
But
we're
I know
old.
we all do. Yeah, I know we do. But I mean, it sort of profits by their. There will come a point when they realise that there is a life balance, that there needs to be a life balance. Else, people.
But do they?
The work-life balance.
I think this is. I think the work. I don't think they do.
Reconcile it.
I mean, we're talking to new ones, but I've talked to old ones too, and I think this is a feature of academic work, isn't it?
Yeah, that's what I mean.
It spills over into everything.
But what I mean is that the university system profits from it and never fixes those aspects of it because the nature of academics is that they will give up entirely to this idea of what they're interested in doing. Whereas in other sectors, that doesn't happen.
Yes.
That's what I'm trying to say.
And I think
It doesn't happen and they have to
this
address
is
it.
one of the areas of interest for discussion. What kind of place does a university need to be, if you like, to harness that, but not either make them leave or have nervous breakdowns.
Yeah.
So I think that's I think it is an important issue that, yeah, and I think this question of whether recognition of what certainly the research side takes.
Has anything come through
If you're also teaching.
in relation to the austerity, in relation to the research aspirations of new universities, in relation to the actual expectations of the roles of the admin, the teaching, and then being research productive, where possibly in the old universities being research productive is more central to the role of the academic, and that's becoming more central. There's more emphasis now in new universities and more pressure around being research productive. I don't know if that came through in terms of pressures and how that relates to austerity, the resources that there are within the new universities.
Well, all these lecturers all want to do research.
I suppose I'm thinking more in terms of
It's just the time they're given to do it,
exactly, yes.
and
That's it, yeah.
and the pressure of getting it done. So, for example, I think in the new university they want them to get it out now for this ref.
Yeah.
Too late anyway. Whereas a new university might feel more right. Well, it doesn't matter. We can invest in you for the next one, kind of thing. So.
More longer
The
term.
morale was worse in the new university, but I'm hesitant to say that is going to, be the case forever, because it was a very particular moment where bad things was happening, around redundancies in the university as a whole. So it might be different in 4 years' time, but they do, they do have far less resources. There's far less, it's a far trickier environment to work in.
Yeah. And the split between the
There's
teaching.
no slack.
Yeah.
Okay, I've given you this. You can have a look at it. It's absolutely nothing set in stone here. It's just a kind of play to see how it kind of works out. And of course, the way we did this, of course, we all read all the everything, and then we shared out doing synopses, and we kind of said, does this work? Does that work? I don't think the project thing does, but if you just like to look at that, what we're saying is they're all anyway meta-reflexives. Though we put a couple as more autonomous than meta.
What was the first category?
Communicative,
So we got
which
nine.
we only saw Isabel clearly will not leave Drayton.
Yeah.
Because her family are there. She doesn't even question it. There'd be no question, for example, of her doing what Michael's doing, leaving her, or what Helen's doing, leaving her husband or a wife in Sweden. But we all have all concerns, so it usually is a matter of trying to balance. But the idea is that a meta-reflexive will never be happy, ever.
I think it's quite surprising that they are all falling into just the one
No,
category.
we're only putting them there.
I know you're putting them there, but I mean,
they can all fall out of it if you like.
I mean, in your interpretation, they are. I thought there might be more of a variation, and in the descriptions of, say, autonomous reflexives, I was thinking we might see more of that. I suppose they're a mixture. You're saying it's a mixture.
But when I hear these threefold categories of, meta, autonomous, and communicative, my mind tends to go, and I think this is wrong. No, this tends to go towards these personality type models, where you're categorised on a 3 or 4 point scale according to whether you're a joiner
obviously is the danger, isn't it?
Yeah. So,
but it's not psychological.
No, so it's not. So in a sense, that what you're getting at here is, are these identities? Well, there's a question as to how far these identities become fixed or become established within these people. Are they continuities, or so that's one set of questions, and the other is how far are these identities shaped by the climate of the times?
I don't think they're identities. Well, they are shaped.
Whatever they are.
Yeah. I mean, so Archer would. Well, I think this is my interpretation of her anyway. Is that an autonomous reflective is definitely shaped, if you like, by the climate of the times, because the opportunities for discontinuity, of escaping or being are just much more, aren't they, in a modern society than in a traditional society.
So what you're saying is, if you went into a traditional society, you would find far fewer meta-reflexive or autonomous reflectives.
You might find meta-reflexives because they seem to idealists seem to pop up everywhere, according to her.
Right, but you'd have less
The idealists, the conscience of whatever society they find themselves in. Probably the hermit, the one who, the one who's kind of, has higher things on their minds.
Right. So these meta-reflexives are the kind of as it were, the troublemakers?
Do you want me to hear what she says? Do you want to hear what she says? She thinks they are. She's got a section in her final book, Making Our Way Through the World, where she calls internal conversations and their outworks. So she's trying to. This is the bit I said. I wasn't. Where she says they. No, I'm going to have to keep moving on. Meta-reflexives. Meta-reflexives are strong universalists, inclusive humanists and participatory democrats. What they seem to be gesturing towards is a notion of a robust civil society unconfined to existing national boundaries, yet somehow remaining unfettered by a new global iron cage.
Okay.
So I think she's making the point that these kinds of people have existed everywhere at all times.
They're just the losers.
Yes, they work at weekends. That kind of thing, I think.
Might they not be arguing that you shouldn't have to be working at weekends?
Well, they might, but what would be interesting is if they're true meta-reflexives, if you see what I mean, they might well work at weekends, whatever.
Writing about.
So even if there wasn't the pressure of the ref, they're just like that, So, basically they feel they've got to, kind of do that. If their project is that important, then they're going to be working at weekends. It would be interesting to see if they suddenly get a nice benign, kind of university that says, oh, it doesn't really matter what you do. Whether they would, and I think I've known people like that, who in really old days would be working all the time, writing their book. They didn't have to, but they just did.
Because they thought it was worth doing.
Because it's a really important thing to do, yeah.
So does it concern you that so many of them are meta-reflexive? Do you think actually Margaret Archer works?
But they're not. They're not meta-reflexive. We just put them in that category. This is completely heuristic. Concern in what sense?
Well, I'm just wondering if that a certain type of person is drawn to
Yes, exactly. So I think this is the issue that we're interested in, is a certain kind of person drawn to university work. So if we're right, if you like, and they're all meta-reflective, but some are a bit more autonomous, and we've put them, so we took Becky and Valeria, because basically they talk more in terms of a kind of upward trajectory for themselves. If you see what I mean. I mean, that might be quite right. And I'm sure this will all change, over the years. So they were thinking, and I have met people, and they weren't in these, but I have met people who are saying, I am building a professorial CV. In 2 years' time, I want to have done the 3 years' time. Now, that is definitely autonomous, is it not? That is, and I suppose the question would be, So, for example, she says also about meta-reflectives, and of course these are social sciences and humanities people in universities. So she says they produce and hers aren't, they're all kinds of people. They produce a critique of both self and society, and above all of the relations between them. There's a deep concern for the underdog, the oppressed, and the globally provide. They want to cultivate qualities within themselves, and actually, and she has a couple of academics who are drawn to the ideal of academic life. So this is what they do. This is what academics in social sciences tend to do, and in the humanities. So they've found a place where they can do it. So if it then becomes a place where they feel they can't do it, what then happens to the functions of the university would be the kind of argument we think we might be coming up to.
I'm just, there seems to be a blurring between the psychological and the sociological here, that when you talked about the type of people drawn to a role, that sounds psychological, and yet she's talking about sociological
except
categories, or...
No, I don't think she is. I think she thinks, for example, events like we've just discussed can make a difference. Mm-hmm. So, she uses event very kind of broadly, yeah. So an event is being born into a particular family.
Yes.
So clearly that's going to make a difference.
Yeah.
or it makes a difference to the enablements and constraints that you have. But then there might be other things that orient you, and there probably are psychological dimensions. As I said, if you go to school and you're labelled very bright, it might be because you're good at decoding text, and some children are, aren't they?
So
They do
things
it quicker than
combined,
other
yeah.
children.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean to say that in the end they're going to turn out overall cleverer. So there will be a dimension, but I don't think it's it's not by any
not
means
fundamental.
completely explained by personality type or psychological things.
Is there a potential, in terms of, let's say, you try to impose normal managerial structures on the way academics work, and some that audit culture, and people being present at their desk or in their office, that actually that would bring up a massive discontinuity around the, I won't use personality types, but around the way
They wouldn't like it at
they
all.
wouldn't like it at all, no.
And in fact, Darren, his school has decided to say, or there's rumours that they're going to say you've got to have X amount of hours in your office.
Yeah.
Some schools have already done it.
Well, then the issue. I mean, if autonomy and control and all these things are so important, then it might well make a difference to who you attract. If you start attracting, for example, all curriculum builders, would that then change the nature of the university and the kind of place it is to be? I mean, I think it is. I mean,
Are you done?
no, I've got more bullet points.
No. Well, I'm sorry, Monica. I'm not bringing things to an end, but I'm saying you did say 40 minutes for your presentation.
Yeah, but they've been
But then we
talking.
interrupt. No, I'm sorry. I don't want. I'm interrupting because I want to say. Unfortunately, as I said to Monica at the beginning, I have to leave at this point.
Okay.
I hope you'll carry on the conversation after I've gone, despite my rude interruption. Can I just remind you that the next HAV seminar is on, I think, the 21st of November, and Peter Jarvis from the University of Surrey is talking about something which I've forgotten about. But anyway, come to learning.
It'll be good.
Yeah. Okay. I apologise for interrupting.
That's okay. That's okay. That's good. We've only got a quarter of an hour yet. Okay, so there was this tight reflective connection to projects and whether that made any kind of difference. But it might just be, I don't know what you think about this, where you get, on the one hand, people who say, right, what I'm only interested in really is, changing the law on human rights. Or what I'm really only interested in is post-colonial literature. And others say, I just like reading and writing and thinking, and I don't know whether there's any significance in that at all. But then the other thing around Margaret Archer's categories was this idea of the characteristics. So some of the characteristics that she attributes to, say, communicative reflectors, which is a kind of contentment, you can see in certainly the ones, that I'd say specifically Sophia, Isabel, there's about 5 of them who just think they've got the best job on the face of the earth because it dovetails everything, because they find themselves in a place where they can do what they want to do, which would be rare for other kinds of people. They don't need to move on, is the point. So apparently quite a lot of so that's what's happened with them. They also pursue one route, which is quite kind of autonomous. They're not pursuing lots of routes to the same end. It's very much the reading and writing and teaching route that they do it. So I've got a few quotations there about. So Helen says, so I like to see that the law has an effect. If it's not having the right effect, how do we change it? It's a rare job. I don't crave recognition from other people, but I need to be proud of myself. Which is again actually a kind of autonomous reflexive kind of sentiment too. So you do see the two kind of coming up together, and I wondered if there isn't a kind of so I've talked about this emergent argument about whether the environment should be an environment for meta-reflexives, because otherwise if you make it too much for not for them, you don't get kind of Michaels, and because they'll go somewhere else and do something else. And then finally, I just wanted to say something about Margaret Archer. You know, how generative is it? And I think it's quite useful. But I wonder whether there isn't a kind of nested hierarchy going on, if you like, so that everybody obviously is interested in all the things, you know, their friends and family doing their work well, but then on top of that, if you get those right, then you can kind of also become an idealist as well, and that actually separating them all out like that doesn't quite work.
I wonder whether you have read the previous her previous work.
Yeah.
So because then when you talk about this personal identity, you know, the formation of personal identity, and then also reflexivity is part of that. Then apparently the academic identity will be part of it.
Yes.
So it's how people balance with how they prioritize the different, you know, their priorities and what their concerns, real concerns, and how they compromise, like, or talk about this, and whether there will be a useful angle to, you know, to kind of look the picture as a whole, and then in order to understand how they form their academic identity better. I don't know, just something.
Yeah, we seem to have veered away from academic identity formation. That's right. Kind of got tied up with what kind of conversations they were having with themselves. I mean, I think there are some quite big things though about, for example, as you were saying, you know, that if you begin to make it an environment which is quite kind of takes away autonomy and control, then the kind of person, at least traditionally, who's come into it is not going to be attracted to it as an institution anymore.
Do you think it should be politicised in the sense that, you know, you could look at this material in the political context to suggest that it would be wrong for government interference or a top-down approach to cause a change that might change universities? Do you see this within that political context? That external factors like government,
do see it within
effect
a political,
in terms of, you know, we're talking about austerity in a sense is, to a certain extent, how austerity affects universities is directed by government.
yes,
And therefore there's a kind of political context, a big political context to this, isn't there, about changing what happens in universities.
yeah, no, it's definitely in a political context. I mean, the other element of it is, of course, is that, I mean, and there is I think there is some kind of evidence of this as well. Is that there's a kind of option, apparently, a call for meta-reflexive, which is a kind of compliance and a collusion and a, you know, a kind of giving up, and you could have that going on as well.
Well, you see a bleeding away from university of that kind of talent towards, especially because it is the arts and social sciences, and we have all these other means of sharing ideas and production and so on now, you know, and in times of austerity, theatre and arts and stuff tends to come back to the fore because we do those sort of things. Whether we would see a kind of new place where that thinking happens, and that would be within the arts sector rather than universities.
Kari, who's the lecturer in dance, she's not going to stay. She's going to leave the university because she thought this was the place, and it was for a bit, but it's too much squeeze on it. She's going to go somewhere else. And she wanted to come to university because she was kind of surviving by doing masses and masses of kind of part-time projects, and was just, you know, she needed some stability and, you know, some security and a place to do it. And she found that place, and now she's going to true meta-reflective style move on because it's getting too squeezed, and she's being asked to do things she doesn't want to do.
Get any sense from the sort of leading on from that argument from the political perspective of their agency, wherever they were positioned, in the
Well-
process to actually influence that? Because there's a sense in which, I'm sure if John were here, he might be talking about those who are getting heavily involved with for a public university
Yeah.
and recognising exactly what is happening. But are these young lecturers coming in who find themselves controlled in a way that they had not expected and are watching this erosion of their
Yeah.
freedoms?
I mean, and as I said, a big chunk of them don't see it like
don't
that.
see it like
they see, you know, they've come in and they think they've found heaven. I mean, that, you know, because they haven't got anything to compare it with.
Yeah.
So they haven't been there for 20 years. So,
Yeah.
and then the other, I mean, there's one, Darius. He's very involved in the union, and he's the one he's the one of all of them who very much sees it as as it becoming very bureaucratized, and his business is to kind of resist that. Somebody like Michael, just as long as he's allowed to do what he wants, forget it. Yeah, forget the kind of collective action thing. Yeah. So it's not as evident as you'd think it would be, you know, in their lives. You know, you know, they're not kind of complaining a lot about admin, and they seem to, and Michael, for example, I mean, like I've always said, he said I do probably of my time I spend about 5%. I know it's not a lot, but I keep my head down and I avoid it.
Yeah, keep my head down.
Yeah.
I'm hearing that a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. So that goes on, you know, and so it's not, you know, it's not ideal either.
Does that mean
Yeah,
you're
I
getting more
wanted to
community?
ask
Sorry. I think
So there's ways round it, isn't there? I mean, people kind of, you know, it's that kind of, you know, what's it called? Passive resistance or something.
Because you would expect them to be moaning about the admin, because you know, new academics are often a dumping ground for doing certain
No,
jobs.
I'd say that, I mean, even Isabel, which I think she's part-time, she's been given exam officer.
Yeah, which is
She's
a
only
major
like,
commitment.
I said like 12 hours, and this is part-time, and producing papers, and she thinks it's brilliant.
Are these more communicative reflexives coming into?
Well, it might be
Is
kind
it
of more.
altering?
I mean, it's
You
like
tend to- they're
it's
relatively
also
passive
the
workforce,
Bernsteinian idea about kind of working classes are more kind of connected to the material base, so that can, like she says, well, if they aren't bringing in money, then they shouldn't do it.
Yeah.
Is what she says.
Yeah, kind of accruing to that.
Yeah.
I think there's a danger as well, isn't there? That the universities do try to become more managerial, more bureaucratic. The expectation on staff to be very diverse, do lots of different roles, work long hours. People are willing to do that because there is the autonomy, there is the freedom,
And because they think the
around,
work is worthwhile.
and it's worthwhile.
You know,
to
so
do.
you don't
Yeah.
want to do non-worthwhile work at the weekend. You'll prepare your teaching and you do your research, but you don't want to do something you think is absolute
Pointless.
pointless. To put it politely, yes. Yes, exactly. I think it was. I don't know. Was it one of the Hargreaves, Andy Hargreaves, did this thing about with school teachers about perceptions of time, and he was saying that he had 4 different types of time. One was micro-political time, and that was the time that you're told to do all the bureaucracy, and they resent that. But if it's time, and I can't remember what he calls it, that's on the core work that you believe in, the teaching, then and they don't mind. It can become intensified, and it's accepted in a quite a different way. So I think that would apply here as well.
Do you think there might be a test for people coming into university to make sure there are no meta? Like the resilience test.
We don't want any idealists here.
Well, because they've put the resilience test in for teachers, and I think it's a bit
Oh,
stupid.
have
Why
they?
This, yeah,
Oh,
this
that's really
September,
interesting.
15-minute questionnaire. has
To
be
see if
filled
you're a
in.
resilient person.
And if you're resilient enough, you can be a teacher. But then being resilient might mean you just don't complain about problems. I'm just so
How do you
ambivalent
capture
about
that in a
it.
questionnaire?
It's just, yeah, past,
So bizarre.
Oh my God, that's.
It is a bit Stepford Wives, isn't it? You know,
Yeah,
teachers
but-
are walking around, things flying, people saying
Yes,
stuff
I'm
awful around the
resilient.
place, and then, I'm fine, you know. So,
Some of the people
Help.
peddling that don't seem to understand the debates about resilience. They've not
Yes.
read about resilience.
I know.
They
Oh
don't
really? Is
understand
it
what they
a
are
terrible
talking
thing?
about.
it seems to have just been, I mean, they've got it now, it's up and running, this test, 15 minutes, I've had a look at some
Is
of
Be
it.
able to
that
stand up.
here or somewhere else?
It's in Britain, here, yes, yeah. based. Well, it's a long story.
So do they take the tests as they come into PGC?
It's yes, yeah. I don't know what's happening. I don't know, Coach. You know what's happening in Nottingham?
The previous government had carried on with the logic of it, because I think it was the Institute that did the major work around it. It might well have been nationally imposed, but of course there's a problem for the coalition because they have to pretend that they're not nationally imposing things. So there's going to be you'd need to be answering how you were dealing with those issues in relation to your recruitment and retention if you weren't using it. That's the kind of way that it happens.
Yes, it's kind of soft.
And is resilience a kind of psychological
quality
construct
that you can have?
Oh, is it?
I've
Okay.
just done the resilience test with 85 teachers to look at their results. 85 experienced teachers. I'm interested. Well,
Oh, you don't know yet?
I do. And there's so many arguments about whether it's a valid test to give. But more interesting was their response to being asked to do it and what they thought about how effective it would be in judging whether someone was suitable to teach or not. So, but it's there. I mean, the question
Presumably you develop resilience.
Well, yes.
If it's what I think
what they
what
thought
does it mean?
They
Yes,
developed resilience to tests.
yes.
For some of them, they actually are talking about it in terms of it's your capacity to be able to cope with working ridiculously long hours in difficult conditions. That's the kind of paucity of the level of
That's
thinking.
terrible.
Yeah.
It's just astonishing.
Yeah.
There's so many factors to say why it's got to be done more carefully than that. But still.
Well, I guess if someone wants the job, they want to go into the job, they're not going to say, I'm not resilient to
No.
things.
The next thing will be
They're going to say,
coaching.
yes,
You'll have
of course I am.
coaching sessions.
Yeah.
Because I've talked to somebody in the States about this, looking at their testing system. You can be coached to appear resilient. What happens if you're not? You get there.
Thank you very much. It's 2 o'clock. It's been great. Thank you very much. It's been really
Thank you very
interesting.
much.
Sorry.
We're not
Yes, I did email you. Because why? Give me your email.
Because my email is kind of maybe they have another termination in university. Someone has got a number. So I missed a lot.
There's another. Somebody else called your name.
Yeah, it must be because I just assigned it like I have to add it.
Right. Okay. So give me
Yeah, so just add it too. That's all.
Yeah, right. I haven't got it anymore. I got it because Sarah had emailed round, hadn't she?
Yes, that's right.
Oh,
That's it. That's one. Most of it was I emailed you. I said no, I haven't got it.
you didn't get. Yeah, that's a shame. Yes. Is it going all right?
Yes, yeah, it's fine. Yeah, I think the first couple of weeks I haven't really one apart from John.
Because nobody emailed.
Yeah, no, and maybe lots of people not back yet. I think that's another and but then since in October and back. We busy to get ready for the MA. For the MA, so we started next
They'll set the
about next time. Is it ready?
No longer
So
they're
helpful.
but
I will do it.
and then one of the things is here.
Support. Yes, that's my job.
No, I said I would do some teaching on it.
Oh, really? But it's
Because I'm director of the ED.
Oh, yeah, I do, yeah. That's it's the.
No, I mean, I'm very happy to teach on it.
It's online.
Oh, it's on online.
It's
Okay.
online, yeah. Well, just mostly because currently it's just maybe if you can share some materials or something, or as you develop it, that would be fine.
But is it interactive?
No,
okay.
not. So
Just
most
material.
of the, yeah.
Okay,
Most of the,
so basically you just need to let me know the format and what kind of topic.
of course.
Traditional one
to get some of your MA students
to like progress,
kind of progress onto the
and because I sense then of course that
and we all had a long discussion about
flexible input would be very important.
So that's why you're
flexible meaning online. Because we could do something where they could get the module in a week instead of the module across 2 weekends.
Or more I need to get to know a bit more than
She didn't have to do that urgently required, and then just do nothing.
It's an online FD.
Even at the first lesson, don't go through the whole process.
It's so different to module work.
But then I did the same. What a commitment! You should get hold of these people and.
Well, mercifully they're always on the web, aren't they?
All right.
Because
Okay.
they're academics, so they're easy to get hold of.
Yes.
Unless they leave.
Yes.
I think
But you can usually find that. So we have to get some money for January now.
Okay.
To get some more money.
Yes. Really? So
of course, then you do more interviews.
Yeah, more interviews. I mean, we won't do anything with it yet.
And another thing that I really want to ask for some advice. Really, I had it's just one of my papers. I used Archer's work, but I used like to use the e-learning. Then I don't think the learning knowledge studio sort of make that journal really interesting because I've got this social theories, but then I don't know whether that's going to more general like teaching or whether they will test it. I don't know whether it's possible. It's someone from it's noise controller.
they deny it. Yes, but they talk in the middle. They keep on saying that there is. So I'm really What's your
That's okay. I catch up with the China. I will send you that.
Yes, send me the
Maybe
paper.
we find a time.
Definitely.
Okay,
You send me the paper and we'll make it
Okay,
down.
thank you.
Okay. Even here.
Okay. Yeah, you've got Jane.
Yeah, Jane's Mark.
What's your goal?
I try to be very hard
Yes.
and question if I
Yeah. Don't make them use confidence.
Yes, in
Just normally hard. Yes.
Oh,
yes,
okay.
yes.
Oh, yeah. That's the boundary. So
Yeah,
go
exactly.
beyond.
Don't reduce.
Exactly.
Mind you, she's quite tough.
Thank you.
I hadn't realised you were ill or anything.
I know.
Well, I didn't know I was ill, and sorry, I was until I was.
I'm really sorry because because we haven't
I
really.
don't know what you just said.
You know, you should send me your supervision record just so I kind of.
To me, it's very, very.
You know, I kind of know what's going on. You know,
I don't believe it is.
I think
people like that
I'm recovering, not 100% yet, but I feel like a veil has been lifted, like a new person has emerged. So, and I feel that I'm ready to get.
So what do you do?
So you suspended?
I didn't suspend.
Oh, you didn't suspend.
I took time off from work.
PGC masters and doctorate.
But
Are you part-time?
PGC
part-time,
masters.
yeah.
Oh, right, okay.
So, because I think I probably
But I
can get
used
back on
to
track,
be
you know,
in
now.
university.
Sort
When I
of
first came out of
back
school,
on
I
my
was in
This is
Christchurch
really
University
useful.
College, not
Right.
university.
Yeah, because
Which would, so the
I'm
new
thinking of doing some sort of
university,
narrative
with its
device, want to
teaching
gather
intensive,
stories.
no pressure on research into
and
the old
maybe
university.
Yeah.
But I worked a lot with old
you know, let
universities
see
at
what
school.
comes out
Yeah,
from
yeah.
the
What
stories.
I think there's been quite
And
a
I've
big
been looking
change
at on reading some
in
of Pat's stuff
the
about
people, the
getting
change.
familiar with
how I
writing
typify
again
it
and just
here,
getting
which
into
is-
the
this is
groove of
controversial
collecting.
stuff,
I think then that will
adopting
lend
this
itself as
position,
well to where I
putting
come
myself
from.
into
You're
this
doing wider
position.
video
participation.
making.
I can see
It is
that
widening
from
Yeah,
participation, so it's the
But
stories
the-
of
traditionally
the
in an
student,
academic
what they
university
say,
of the old
their
university, the
experience.
person who took
Yeah.
on the role of leading the team or
It's still a
whatever,
little bit
they were
Because we've
elected
also got our
to the
Bernstein
positions
project that
Yeah.
did that.
by their peers for 3-year periods or 4-year periods. So the idea was, if you were, you know, like the head of secondary education or whatever,
I'll send you some. I'll
you
send you
come
my
in that role
notes.
because you're
You know,
Yeah.
my
peers.
thing.
Yeah.
But he
And then
elected
you
you
see,
into
then
that
it'll
role,
kind
more
of-
than 2 people wanted to.
And
You were
then if I've
representing
got
them.
something, I can kind of send it to you.
You were not
Yeah,
line
yeah.
managing.
Yeah, thanks.
And what
Yeah,
has
yeah.
completely changed, most of
So,
them
so,
have
so sorry.
what is also intriguing, and I've tried to get to the bottom of it, but even in the schools of politics and sociology and so on in this university, which I have very little contact with, but occasionally through union circles do, I try to, I can't find anywhere that actually tried to intervene in that happening, in the sense that it's almost happened without anybody. Without
The change has taken
yeah,
place.
now when I point
Well,
out
maybe because
that-
academics aren't politicised, or I don't
or
know.
not tradition in
Well,
education.
not when it
would be.
really comes down to the, you know,
Yeah, well, it's
bare knuckle stuff. I don't know. I just don't know. It's
interesting.
But I feel the institution. I think it's changed a lot. And I was talking to students, and I'm interested in what you just said, because a lot of students here would agree with what you said about the way everything's organised. It's very high. It's very much to do with what's needed to tick boxes, and it's becoming so much more like that. And financial constraints about, you know, so much of it's running that way. But and in order to get on in the system, you have to act in a certain way. But
Yes.
so where is the meta?
That's
you know,
that's what I'm. Yeah.
That's the kind of worry.
I mean, the student
or is that just pie in the sky? Am I being ridiculously?
I'm
Somebody else
increasingly
would say we
beginning
don't
to.
have time to pay being meta. What's it to come?
Well, yeah. I mean, if that's the society you want, that's the society you want. It's the logic. It's the logic.
I know it is, but
I mean, some of the students in student body